sir.
Very good morning to all of you, and my sincere regards to all the dignitaries here, and my love and affections to dear students, my friends, colleagues. Just 2 days before I came to Calcutta, I have very little knowledge about all this program. Actually, I am holding the Deputy Secretary of Lalit Kala Academy. I came to Calcutta for a special program because we are going to inaugurate one art center for Lalit Kala Academy and for entire India, for West Bengal is concerned. One new building at AJC Bose Road. It is a 6-floor art center, huge building. So no doubt it is all the benefits of the art or the people, the students who are belongs to this region. There is no doubt. And I have very few knowledge. I am very small man with a little bit of height only, but I don't have any big knowledge, honestly. I born and brought up at Cuttack, Odisha, educated at Delhi and settled at Delhi. So by educations, my expertise in ancient art, painting and all. And by virtue, I'm always, since my career, I'm associated with the artist. I'm not an artist, but I'm always live with the artist from all surroundings. Rightly, VC sir said about art and architecture development here at Nivedita University. Excellent, and I'm really congratulating VC sir and all these people.
Dear participants and students, a very warm welcome to day 3 of Confad 2025, the National Conference on Art and Design Education in India, 150 years of evolution, legacy and impact. Hosted by Sister Nivedita University in collaboration with Lalit Kala Academy Regional Center, Kolkata. Today is a significant day as we celebrate World Industrial Design Day. And our theme for this morning in the plenary session is Design as an Independent Domain of Pedagogy, New Perspectives. This session aims to explore how design has evolved from being a discipline taught within art schools to now standing as an independent domain, interdisciplinary, future-oriented, and transformative.
Absolutely. As the world acknowledges the pivotal role of design in addressing global challenges, today's conversation will highlight how design education is redefining its own boundaries, bridging technology, sustainability, culture, and humanity. It's our honor to have with us some of the most influential figures in the field of design education and practice in India. To mark this special day, we begin with a symbolic gesture that resonates with growth, sustainability, and creativity. May I now request all of our dignitaries to kindly come on stage for the watering of plant ceremony as we celebrate World Industrial Day.
Huge round of applause for all the dignitaries, please.
Thank you, everyone. On this occasion, thank you. Thank you for watering the plant. Thank you, everyone. On this occasion, it is our privilege to invite a very special person to share a few words on World Industrial Design Day, someone who has been a guiding force in the design fraternity in India and beyond. I would request Professor Ashok Chatterjee to share his thoughts and reflections on the significance of this day. Sir, please come.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you very much for this privilege, for giving a kickstart to the celebration of Industrial Design Day. We just heard that the world understands the importance of design. I hope that's true, but we've seen quite a lot of evidence in recent years that the world is still to wake up to that. So I don't think we're there yet. Whatever I have to say just now, you have distinguished industrial designers who will be speaking to you on the subject. But I think we should just reflect, we're at a university which is trying to bring design into its activities and its curriculum. Whatever I say is about design. I don't know if there's a World Art Day, but is there? Yeah, there is a World Art Day. Good. You would know, most of the people here in this room would know how to celebrate that. But are you really sure that you know how to celebrate Industrial Design Day? Because that does mean understanding industrial design and underline the word industrial, because that is what this discipline is all about. It's not an add-on to art or to architecture or to engineering. It's a discipline in its own right. So, if you do bring design into your curriculum, I would suggest that the first thing to address on this day is what kind of a designer are you actually wanting to send out of here? Or should I say, what kind of a professional are you trying to send out of here? Maybe into the world of art. But is it design awareness that you want, which you can certainly do? Or is it a design professional and practitioner that you want to send out? Otherwise, I think if you don't answer these questions, you may end up, I hope that doesn't happen, but the danger is there, that you'll be just one more design tuition shop, like the hundreds that are proliferating at every street corner in our country, and I hope that doesn't happen. But if you do want to have a design school, a really intelligent and honest design school, you'll have to start by establishing workshops. because you cannot teach design without workshops, all right? So you'll have to have that opportunity where students of design, hands-on, they learn about materials, they learn about technologies, they have that as a constant daily interaction. And you will have to have instructors of design who themselves are practicing professionals. And I underline that word, practicing. They come into a design school not with a PhD qualification. That's fine if you have it, but have they got a body of professional work that has been tested in the marketplace for real life clients? If you do not have that culture, if you cannot accommodate that culture, then do not call yourself a school of design. You can have design awareness, you can have all kinds of design exposures, but do not call yourself a school of design. Otherwise, you will be back in this morass of mediocrity in which we are swimming at the moment. Yesterday, Professor Balram and I had a very nice dinner with a group of people who have come together to try and mobilize design awareness in Calcutta. And a very significant observation was made, which was just about tossed aside. But at SNU, you can't afford not to listen to what we heard yesterday. And that was that in Calcutta, excellence in art is appreciated. But in design, it is only mediocrity that clients seem to want or encourage. So if that is the situation, you have a huge challenge. And there are ways to address that, but I would suggest on World Industrial Design Day, does SNU reflect very clearly as to what it actually understands by this word and by this profession, and whether you really want it. Because if you do want it, you're in a fantastic position to take back design education from the challenges that are now surrounding it, when design education has moved out of the hands of educators and design professionals and is being commanded, if you like, by the UGC. The advantage you have is the national education policy, which is sympathetic to design education, but do you have the space, do the people who fund this institution, who run this institution, do they really want to challenge the system? Because if you want serious design education, you'll have to challenge the system. Right? The other thing I would point out is that what is the position of a design school like this one, which is trying to start, in connection with the environment within which it is located? You're located in Calcutta, Kolkata, whatever you want to call it. You're located in the eastern region. You are the gateway to the entire eastern region, the northeast and eastern Bihar and UP, Odisha, and then Bengal. How far do you see that region in terms of your own mandate as a design school? We've just been talking this morning over breakfast about a design school located in Guwahati, which turns its back on cane and bamboo. When in that design school was started, cane and bamboo was seen as one of its great USPs. And just across the mountains, not too far away, China is miles ahead of us in taking cane and bamboo industrially designed products into global markets. But right across in the heart of Assam, with this rich cane and bamboo culture and everything that that culture stands for in today's search for sustainable development, a design school ignores. So what is your relationship going to be with this region? I realize that students who come here will say that we don't want to become designers only for Calcutta or for Bengal or for the Eastern region. We can go anywhere. Fine. But have you used the opportunity of this region? Is this region your laboratory for learning? And if it is, then there's much that you can do. And I think your agenda should take that into account. I mentioned a couple of days ago how important to me the Calcutta Metro is as a demonstration of what industrial design actually does to change the quality of life, to change attitudes and behaviors. That metro experience needs to be understood in the context of the social sciences. Why did it transform a city? No one has done that. But it does point out that we who are in the world of design, we neglect often the social sciences. We can't afford to. So do you have links with the social sciences? You have the social sciences in your university. Can you make them part of design education? You'll be doing a great service if you can do that. But we had suggested, we meaning the NID, we had tried to involve ourselves with the metro, but we weren't very welcome. But after the metro came out, we made another suggestion. We asked the West Bengal government to give us one park, one hospital, one school. And would you allow teams that NID would put together in Calcutta, using resources in Calcutta, to demonstrate how that attitude that had transformed the city underground could be brought overground? And there was no response. We asked just for this. We said we would raise our own money, but we would demonstrate what design could do to the quality of life by demonstrating in one hospital or clinic, one park, one school. Well, we failed, but can you do that? Can you do that? Because this would be the kind of demonstration that we really need. The other thing that you could do, irrespective of where design comes into your your plans, is to at least document the design resources of this city and of this region. Just yesterday, we had a remarkable presentation by Dr. Christine Michael, who is here, who showed us her work of what was happening in the jails of Madras Presidency in terms of a particular material and a particular application of design. Now, it struck me from what Christine was showing yesterday, what enormous resources there must be in this city of documentation of experiences which are design linked and which would give students an understanding of the rich resources in this area, just as she found in Tamil Nadu. And what she found has, I suppose, if I'm right, Christine, is just the beginning, right, of her exploration, how much else it opened up. She was showing us records that she must have dug out of some archives in Tamil Nadu, but those are archives you probably have here. So what resources can you develop that could, through perhaps the design lens, but help all your studies here? So that seems to me something that would be very important to do that. In addition, you have this whole last, I would say, certainly since independence, if you don't want to go back even further. Of course, there's the whole Tagore experiment in Vishwabharati, which needs to be documented. But even if you just take this city and you look at this city's contribution to design since independence, can you at least document that? Because the names are being forgotten, the people are being forgotten. Nobody mentions Raghunath Goswami. and his body of work. Nobody mentions Signet Press, O.C. Ganguly, the work of the advertising agencies in this city, which was so outstanding. Where are these records? Where are these archives? Can you do something to at least protect that for the future? And finally, I'd just like to say that you have a particular challenge because you are called the Sister Nivedita University, okay? And she stands there in your courtyard, but she's turned her back to this institution apparently, because she's looking out at nothing in special, but who was she? And one of the things that you can do to honor that person whose name you carry is to institute, in the name of today's World Industrial Design Day, some recognition for design for women. Because she spent her short life in this region serving women. And her life was a life of service. And design is all about service. It's not about art. It's about service. So could there be a Sister Nivedita award or a Sister Nivedita recognition of what design can do to lift the quality of life for 50% of the population on this planet? You have people like Sister Nivedita on one hand, you have Mother Teresa on the other, right? And together, it seems to me, you have two powerful women who are sending a story of service. And that is what we should remember on Industrial Design Day. It's all about service. It's all about serving other people. It's all about lifting the quality of life. So how about remembering Sister Nivedita with something, careful, design again. Surely there's an opportunity from the name that you carry. It's a huge responsibility you carry, but don't let it happen like has happened to Gandhiji. There's an MG road everywhere in this country, but nobody cares about him. So don't let this become an SN institution. Remember Nivedita, remember what she lived for, what she died for. And remember that if some contribution you can make towards design for women's needs, you will be serving a great purpose. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I feel some of us still couldn't get over the last speech that you gave day before yesterday, and there is another one. Thank you for steering up all the questions and wonders that we already have in mind, and suggesting us with your inspiring words. It is now time to felicitate the guests who have shaped the discourse of design in India through their pedagogy, practice, and leadership. May I request our joint coordinators, Dr. Shoma Bhumik and Dr. Nandini Ghosh, to kindly come forward for the felicitation of Professor Dr. S. Balaram, Professor Raja Mohanty, and Mr. Swarup Dotto.
With a huge round of applause, let's welcome Professor S. Balaram, Professor Raja Mohanty, and Swarup Dotto, sir. We'd request Nandini ma'am to felicitate Balaram, sir.
I'd request Dr. Shoma Bhumik to felicitate Professor Raja Mohanty. I would request Shoma Di and Nandini Di, both of them, to felicitate Mr. Shaurup Dutta.
Now I would request our panelists to take their seat as we start with our plenary session for the day.
Our first speaker today needs no introduction. In the world of design education, Professor Dr. S. Balaram. Professor Dr. Singhanapalli Balaram. Perhaps the best introduction of Singhanapalli Balaram is that he is a barefoot designer by birth and by ideology. Born during World War II in a tiny village of Andhra Pradesh, in a poor farmer family, he walked barefoot till his college education, for he could not afford footwear. This experience made him empathize with the poor, neglected rural masses and work for barefoot designer, about which he wrote widely, including a chapter in his book, Thinking Design. Art and drawing were considered useless in school, so he taught himself using any scrap of paper he could find in garbage bins. Frequent punishment didn't deter him. After a diploma in engineering, he was picked up by National Institute of Design as one among the pioneer group of design teachers of India. His designs won international awards. He received 4 patents, published 12 books, and has served NID as chairman of education, extension programs, etc. for 40 years. He championed universal design education in India. He was fellow of the Royal Society of Arts UK and presently design chair at DOT School of Design. With a huge round of applause, please welcome Professor Dr. Singhanapalli Balaram. Welcome once again, sir.
I think so. I have a friend who is very poor, funny but wise. One day, outside his little hut, he's been talking to somebody on the great water crisis which is engulfing the globe. Men always talk very on the sky, but his wife is more practical. She shouted from the hut, "Hello, I need some water, otherwise we will have a water crisis in the house itself." So he's immediately, of course, men always also palm it on somebody else. So he called his little son who is playing there. He's only some 5-year-old. "Hey, come here. Take that mud pot there. Go to the river and fetch some water. Your mother needs water." So very obligingly, that little son came, took the pot and going. While he is going, he called him, "Come here." Gave him a big slap on the face. "Go, don't break the pot." See, the friend who is talking to him earlier, "Hare Mullah, he hasn't yet broken the pot. Why did you hit him?" He said, "Bhavakuf, won't it be too late to do that? I should do it early." So this is about the future. So today we are going to project our future of design in this country. But before that, we should also know some basics of design. So I will see that the organizers asked me, you can now switch it off. People are seeing me here, rather they don't have to see the photo. See, I was asked whether I'm making a PowerPoint presentation. I said no. Earlier, whenever I write a book or speak, it's all full of pictures because the designers can't do without pictures. Then after some time I felt, am I using the pictures as a crutch? So when I wrote one book long time ago, 20 years ago, called Thinking Design. Then I wrote a second book, a sequel, almost a sequel, called Speaking Design. Then I said, this time I'm not going to put any one picture. So this is like this. So it's black and white and that's it. No pictures, no color, nothing. Today also, so that we could concentrate on what is being said. Today, you must be wondering how rude this person is because I haven't kind of set the protocol of normal behavior of a speaker. I deliberately did it because designers do this kind of crazy things. No, they do things differently. So I would like to kind of thank first the Nivedita University for calling me here and giving me this marvelous opportunity. This is, you won't believe, actually Calcutta is instrumental in my joining design education in a way, but I won't tell you about that. But today, I am here. This is my first talk in Calcutta. So I'm very happy. And I'm also happy that on a Sunday, so many people have come here, not to listen to my lecture probably, but just to cheer me up out of love for me. So that's wonderful thing. So I'm very thankful to all of them, all of you. Now, I would like to start my talk. You can stop me whenever you feel it's too boring. I would like to start with Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, not because he's from Calcutta, not because he's a great man, not because I'm influenced by him and I'm very kind of very admired always his work and all that, but simply because he is the man who brought design to this country. And that credit we could never kind of take out from him. So therefore, I think it is only fair to start with him. I want to start my talk with his one clarification about art, and I want to end it with another clarification on another important aspect. And the one thing is about art. In his famous work called Religion of Man, there is a chapter on the artist. In that, he narrates one little incident. He says that one day he is taking a walk with a Chinese friend in Peking, and on the while going, suddenly a donkey has been sighted. So the Chinese friend got very excited and said, "Look, there is a donkey." Then the poet reflects on it. What made him so excited about it? Because the taxonomy of a donkey is not very impressive. Then from that he derives. You see, there is a proverb in Telugu, Raviganchanacho Kaviganchana Kada. If the sun can't see it, the poet will see it. What a beautiful way of putting it. So Rabindranath Tagore, a poet, saw the reason. He says that the only evidence of truth in art exists when it compels us to say, I see. I see is the moment. Any work of art all the good artists have done that, from Leonardo da Vinci's the smile of Mona Lisa, I see. When Salvador Dali had done that lips of her, I see. And then when Picasso, he has put bicycle handles and a seat in a way that it shows you bull's head, I see. Campbell soup, which is a normal soup can, when Andy Warhol put it together and made it into something which you will remember forever. So these are all examples of art and how art happens. But this is not the talk about the art. I want to know what is design then. The design, if line is a point taking a walk, the great Paul Klee said that, and architecture is frozen music, Goethe said that, then what is design? Design is, according to me, a happy marriage of body and soul, form and function, utility and beauty. That's it. It's the happy is important word here, because marriage does happen, but every time it is not happy. Particularly body and soul, because according to another great Bengali, but probably I shouldn't be calling him Bengali, Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo, in his book Life Divine says that the main problem is body, for the soul to get its ultimate realization, and that is there. So the designers have this terrible problem of putting body and soul together. It's not easy, but they have to manage it. They have to see that it is happy. The problem with design is, then what is the problem? The main problem is design says from the beginning, break all the rules you ever know about it. So design doesn't have the rules. On the other hand, it advocates you should break the rules. It advocates constantly you should question. You should constantly reinvent what you have done earlier. So design is not a noun, it is a verb. Design is not an artifact, but an act. Design is not expression, but it is a way of thinking. This is what design is. Then I have to say this because this clarification is necessary in an art college when we are talking. Design is not a personal expression, but solving a problem. I'm not saying this. In the Great India Report, 1958, Charles and Reims have come to India to suggest what kind of design institute we should have. In that report, it is clearly written, Charles Sims very clearly says that, don't put a art hat. He's very clear about it. He wants, he says that if you take artists, engineers, but we have to take from these areas only. No? At that time, there is no design. So he says that if you take architects and engineers, don't take them for their knowledge, aesthetic knowledge, but you should take them in spite of them. This is important, because it's not for that, because they're kind of upset with something, that is what design will help them to become better. Design is not also a skill, but it is a kind of it's a thinking process. I remember at NID many times, I used to sit in the admission group, a group of us used to always decide the admissions. And the NID admissions used to be toughest in the country. Many of my students who have afterwards joined, they will vouch for it. One particular case I should mention here, one boy from Kerala who had come with tons and tons of work. That happens normally all the time. He is talented. He has got very good drawing skill. And in spite of all this tons of work, and that is his own work, and he demonstrated there in the interview, we rejected him. He went away, he was heartbroken because he wanted to very much join. He's a well-known film director's son. But the director is so good, Arvindan, B. Arvindan. You must have heard of him. He's not there now anymore, but he made some excellent films like Kanchan Sita and all that. So he went away. But he wanted very keen to join NID. He again worked even more rigorously, and next year he again came with even some more work, piles and piles of work. Unfortunately, again we rejected him. But he didn't leave that. He went away. Third time he again came. How many times we keep on seeing this boy? We felt very bad, but the psychologist who is sitting with me next to me, he said no. Then I said, this is the end of it. But this time something else has happened. His father really wanted to find out what is wrong with my son. So he came to me, Mr. Arvindan. He simply said, he's a man of very few words. He said that, I don't want my son to give admission into NID, but just tell me what is wrong with my son, I will correct it. So I said, that's very good. And I told him that all that he has to do is he has to do a lot of unlearning. Unlearning is a new word everywhere. Ask him, he is too much into the groove of this, his particular style, keeps on doing it. It is difficult for him to admit any new thinking into it. So first he has to for some time, he has to forget about it. So that is now the story. Next time he did that, and he came fourth time, and Ramu Arvindan is today NID graduate, and he's doing very well abroad, I think he is. So, but what this says is unlearning is very important in design. The other one is yesterday, past 2 days, we've been talking about what kind of, design is not a single man's work, ever. I have worked I am the project head of many projects where I'm single-handed, but actually I'm not single-handed. What about the model maker? What about the assistant? What about the typist? What about all of them? In film only we put all those names, but in real life we ignore all of them. But they all should be there. In fact, design is the teamwork exactly like the director of a film. I was reading this book, Speaking of Films by Satyajit Ray. He mentions there an incident of how he was not happy. You see, a great cameraman like Subrata Mitra worked on this Patyar Panchali. I'm sure all of us know that beautiful artistic scene of the train coming and the two children running towards the train, and there is a sway of the flowers, grass flowers. And in this book, I was really kind of amazed at Mr. Ray's particularity. He says that I shouldn't have listened to Subrata because I got carried away by this so artistic beauty. So that scene, he says that scene is a little too long in the total length of the film. This is the sensitivity. And he is not saying that Subrata has not done a good work, but it is his own. He put the blame on himself that how much is needed, only the final cook is the director. Designer is just like that. All others or technicians, the technical skill is absolutely important. Some things which the designer himself can't do. So, but this is, I think, is important to remember. Design is not about beauty, not about creativity, not about technical innovation, not about X, Y, Z. Then what is design? These are all these are design, but they are only instruments to something, instruments to say something, to serve, as Chatterjee has been telling, to serve the need of a man. So empathy is the most important thing for a designer. Design starts with man and ends with man. Man is the measure for designers. So that said about design, about the teachers, design teaching, I will tell two things. Design teaching is not actually giving knowledge to the students. It's wrong notion. I have learnt it by experience. Designer is only a cohort. Designer is co-learner to the student. Design teacher only guides him. That's why we have the word guide and not a teacher. The other one is, and again it comes from the great Rabindranath Tagore, he said very beautiful thing once. A burning candle only can lit another candle. What a beautiful way of telling. Because the students are unlit candles. Now, if the teacher is not burning himself, how can he lit others? What a beautiful way of telling that you have to be practicing professional before you go and tell him. Because it's an experience we are talking about. No, it's not just knowledge somewhere else you pick up and give it to from here to here. It's not a transaction of knowledge. Now, saying this, I think we have now some clarity about design and some clarity about art. Let us talk about this. What are the concerns of the future? When we started design teaching as a novices sometime back in some 60 years ago at NID, we are first, you can call us guinea pigs of this country, design teachers. I mean, we also don't know what is design teaching, but we jumped into it thinking that we could do something, some meaning of it. Whether we have done some meaning or not, only time should tell. But what happened was, at that time, the problem is different. The problem then is awareness. Nobody knew what is design. So how do you expect children to join for studying design at NID and afterwards IDC and various other institutions which have started? So awareness is the problem at that time. Today, it is totally different. What is the difference? I don't know about awareness. I also don't know whether really that is the right kind of understanding of design. That is questionable. But the number of design colleges have increased enormously. I've been told, there is no correct data, but they say something like 1,100 schools, design schools exist in this country. Small, big and all that. Sometimes the coaching institutions also announce themselves as the design schools. That should not worry us. Now, why should it worry? Competition is always good and competition is healthy. But there are some other worries apart from competition. One is the quality. Is the quality correct? And who is checking the quality? Who is there to check the quality? Has it become one kind of factory where graduates are produced one by one, like stamped, and design thinking has become a formula, design process has become a formula? That way to check. And the most important thing is, and it has come last 2 days also here and there, is there enough demand? You see, when we are having 1,100 schools, each school is the average, say, 40 people or 50 people. more than that, graduating every year. Do we have enough jobs for them or enough work for them? Not necessarily jobs means, you join a industry, but do we have? There is no data, nothing. The third and most important fear, in fact, this is the first I should have put. It has come the other day from the students, I think, that technology, everybody is worried. Now AI is coming in a big way, and what will happen to us? Will we still be there? And AI, VR, and robotics, these are all kind of frightening. That fear, that is the kind of biggest terror people have. That terrorism also needs to be addressed. That is another concern. My other concern is also about the relevancy thing. Chatterjee just touched when he talked today. But what we are teaching and what we are learning, is that relevant? Is that relevant common every region? Whatever is in Assam, whatever grows in Assam is different from whatever grows in Punjab or whatever grows in Kashmir, whatever grows in Kerala. But we still, are we justified in saying the same kind of curriculum for everywhere? Curriculums are being sold now for 10 lakhs or 15 lakhs. And people are all over the country, they are buying it and using it. And what is your problem? It is kind of a mass production happening. But the problem is, are they relevant? Are they ever relevant? A person like Larry Baker only questions this. And he finds, actually, you don't have to go anywhere. You have that in your past. He told about it, about the architecture. But that kind of thing is not happening in design. It's only very, very few cases we have where we are using our own materials like bamboo. Bamboo, to some extent, there are people working. But what about other materials? What about jute? What about palm? What about coconut? What about hyacinth? Hyacinth is a menace in Coimbatore, where I live. But somebody could work that waste into wealth, you can make it. But that is what design is all about. You can make many things with the hyacinth instead of cursing it and trying to, make it pollute even more. From water pollution, now you make it into earth pollution. So, but these are areas which are untouched by design. I'm not pointing finger at any particular person, but I'm saying these are the questions one should ask. Is it just, education has become just chasing profits? You may say there is what is wrong with chasing profits. But if it is just chasing for the chasing sake, then there is something wrong. It's not a kind of commercial activity to earn money and that's it, see the profits. For that you will low down to anything. So, and are the students joining just for the prospects of getting a job which pays them so many lakhs per month? Or there is even another angle, they are joining design colleges to escape the tyranny of mathematics and science. You see, mathematics and science, many people don't like it. But is that as an escape, people are joining design institutions? Or what are these? But these questions need to be asked and answered in a proper, logical way. A survey needs to be done. Somebody has to properly do an identification of the problem and identification of the solution. Okay. Then there are kind of at least 3 important areas. I can't go through all of them, all the other areas, but 3 areas I picked up where we could do the future pointers. One is in the area of the issue of human development. There are 2 kind of important domains which remained untouched, unfortunately, after even 100 years of design existence in this country. One, I must say, I have been kind of pondering on it for a long time, since development has been kind of, we talked about it since 1979, but inclusivity we have been talking about 1990. But how far it is it's in the institutions, I have no idea. Inclusivity is important. Inclusivity includes, first of all, elderly people like us, like me, Mr. Chatterjee, and many others. And that is not the one. Everybody has to, we hope that everybody will die of old age and not of disease. I'm sure everybody will agree, and I bless everybody to live to be 100. But are we concerned about it? The place where I stay now, anyway, why the place where I stay now? Any hotel you go today, the bathrooms are very slippery. Any time you might fall, and if you fall at certain old age, that is the last, because the recovery will be very, very, very tough. Yeah. So, are we including it? Why up to that? My son, I have got two sons. One son is left-handed, one son is right-handed. They keep on telling me how biased I am. Because I am a right-handed person, and the left-handed guy constantly says how designers are very, very unfair, because everything is right hand. The shutter is right hand side. All the two-wheeler controls are on the right hand. The writing tablet is on the right hand side. So this is so unfair to left-handed people. Because I am right-handed, we don't realize it. Because most of the designers, fortunately, are not disabled. They don't understand the disabled problems. And that number is not any less. 15% of total global population is one way or other disabled or differently abled. My son is one of them. He's only left-handed. So he won't get any privileges like the disabled person. But he constantly tells me, I am a disabled person because I am being discriminated by the design community. I've been trying to have this course called Universal Design in many design colleges, but that is happening only very, very, very few colleges. That is one thing I think we should, and there are many, if you once look at this equality problem, this is a design for equality. There is general inequality. There is kind of caste inequality. There is everywhere there is some kind of equality exists in India much more than in any other country. So that we are not addressing. Design is not addressing that. And it's very important to address, but not as a philanthropy, but as if you are a citizen and if you are a thinking Indian designer, it is your duty, not just philanthropy. You are not doing any favor to anybody. Right, like Royal College of Art rightly calls, they have a small research cell, which they call it is for the design for the elderly, but they call it design for future selves, yourselves, because you all will be one day elderly. You all will be one day very old, very, 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 very old. And so, but you are not designing anything for yourselves. So Royal College of Art rightly says that designing for your future selves. We all should see that we will prepare designs in this country for our own future. There are no grab bars anywhere in any hotel. Yeah, normally if there are some, I would be very, very happy. But this has not been taken as the serious requirement. The other one is even more serious to me. I talked about the differently abled and the elderly. I will go to the other end of the ladder. The younger people. Younger people, you know what is the problem? At least 8 out of 10 students, young students today of the Z generation are suffering from mental illness. They're not acknowledging it because it's something taboo to say, I have got mental depression, but they quietly commit suicides. They quietly go to the 6th floor and jump. They quietly expect and wish that the car from the back will come and run over on them. They quietly wish a fan will fall on their head and then kill them. Why is it happening? It's not body shaming. That is another thing altogether, anorexia and all that. But I'm talking about mental illness is in some degree or other is prevailing in many, many young people, particularly creative people, because there is a reason for why creative people are like this, because creative people have this strange thing of coping with what the society wants and what is their inner urge and expression. So these designers are also, any creative field has this problem. So earlier they used to go to drugs, but now so there used to be some drugs and drinks, but now it's become even serious. They're losing the kind of meaning in life. So when you don't see meaning in life, then you will see no point in living. I think this is something all educators should attend to it very, very seriously. It's a very important issue. Now, the other one I want to touch, that is the human. These two are important, inclusivity and mental development or mental disorders, attending to mental disorders, which are common. I think it is the institution's responsibility. It's not parents' responsibility. Many times parents don't even know. I came to know because some students felt some kind of they can share their confidential information with me, they told me. But there should be an institutional support. Many design institutions don't have any support. Many of them don't even have good playgrounds. So this is the situation about on the human development. Then we will go to the technology, issue of technology. I was reading that only 3 weeks ago, Bill Gates had made a comment. And if Bill Gates says something, any successful person says something, everybody listens. So I very curiously read this article. Bill Gates identified the future career options are 3. He says one is biology, and the other one is, he says that software development, and the third one, he says, is the energy sector. These are the 3 sectors, he says, that are the future sectors. I'm very surprised and also very dismayed to find design is not there. Why is design not there? Probably Bill Gates doesn't know much about design. To me, design should be the criteria. Then I read on what criteria he is saying this. The criteria is that he says that innovation wherever it is and where is kind of emotional aspect wherever it is, that can't be replaced by a machine, because machine is a mechanical, there is algorithm important. Whereas intuition doesn't. Intuition can't be attributed to a machine. So I said that is precisely the point. Design is intuition based. So like the art is intuition based, any creative activity is intuition based. So it should have been there. It's instinctual. It deviates from the rules and codes. So design should have been there. I would think that it should be there. It is. Design gets this. If science is, somebody very well said, science is aha moment. Design and art are ahaha moment. So when you get this ahaha, then you have got the design. Then the third one I picked up is the issue of socio-economic development. We all know, thanks to COVID-19, started learning and working from home. It is becoming a reality now. I know half the time I attend many times. I say I would better attend online rather than going physically there because of all the troubles of traffic jams and all that. So, but this is going to be a reality very soon because the future, many people would learn through online and also work through online. This is going to be there. But nothing is without its own problems. It will create its own problems. But at least that is the kind of direction where we are going. The other one is global learning. Distance learning is now, very real. You can learn, you can talk to anybody thousands of kilometers away. So in the same way, you can see and, hear and everything from also so many kilometers away. So the distant learning is happening the global way. Of course, it has got its own the other side of the social media. Three things you could clearly identify. One is the addiction to the media that is happening in children because children are most vulnerable. It is happening to adults also. Many of us are kind of addicted. You can't resist the call of the social media. There is also brainwash. When you look at that, the brainwash automatically happens, whether you like it or don't like it. And the last and most dangerous one, which you already mentioned, is the main danger of social media is the loss of meaning. When loss of meaning is so severe, and it's so easy to convince somebody who is not sufficiently have the mental strength to resist it, it's very easy to get carried away. Sometimes it is for good purposes, like Ronaldo's, that little skip of that 2 second or 3 seconds kind of video strip where Ronaldo take out his Coca-Cola bottle and puts his kind of water bottle there. Immediately the news is that Coca-Cola lost some 4 million or some huge sum of money in their sales. That's a good thing, probably. So Ronaldo has actually promoted this. But the same thing can happen the reverse way also. It shows the kind of power of the social media. Design is powerful because design is the one behind all this. Somebody has designed that. Somebody has thought about it. So this is the power of the social media. So we should learn how well we can use the social media. Now I will then mention something. Suppose we apply design thinking to teaching. What do we teach? We teach, I feel, for the last 60 years I've been in teaching, I still teach. What are we teaching? Is there anything good in that? Good change happened? There's hardly anything. So this is what worries me. You see, if something is like this forever, you should worry about it because that's not the nature of things. It should keep on changing. It should keep on developing. If you are not doing it, then they are stuck up and we are dead. In design also that kind of thing is happening. So I would like to just to shake that kind of thing, and why not we have a couple of courses I suggest for design. One is the experiential course. The experience, we are not using it. Somebody very wisely said that an ounce of practice, an ounce of experience is worth a ton of knowledge. So we are only giving the tons of knowledge, but we are not giving any experience at all. At NID, we started long time back. I don't know whether it is still there at NID, but this is an experience which Mohan Bhandari and others have started. Then I took over. I have been, till my retirement, I have been doing it. When the Godhra trouble has started, I was right in the middle of this course with students in a village. with, and there in that middle of the this great dangerous situation, there is one Muslim girl whom we have to protect. So anyway, I won't tell you all of that drama, but what I'm telling is this experience is important. Today, after so many years, I'm still remembering this because this is an experience I have gone through. It is not something I have read it. Myself and my 2-3 colleagues have gone through the whole horrendous, trouble. And so why can't we give students experience? This course and a similar course should be there where wherever possible experience should be used as a teaching tool, and then you don't have to do anything. Just give the experience and ask them to reflect on it. We all know that experience automatically doesn't become a knowledge or useful knowledge. Experience has to be reflected upon, turned into your knowledge and wisdom. So that should happen. Experiential courses we should start as many as possible. The other one is co-design. He touched upon, Mr. Chatterjee mentioned the first day, co-design with not designer to designer. That is okay, that is happening, the teams are happening. But what is not happening, and it should happen more, not happening means not completely, but we have examples like Javaja and many other places. But we should co-design with another kind of person who is a non-designer. So if I'm working for a blind person, the blind person should be my co-design. Because he knows the problem, he will tell me what not to do. Only then whatever I do will have some meaning. I have worked on such projects many times, and I would like to have that kind of co-design as a regular thing in design institutions. The other one is travel as a learning. Many people misunderstand this and they project it as, we will take you to Hong Kong or we will take you to Singapore or something like that. You come and join our school, which to me doesn't make any sense. Or the design institutions are becoming a tourist agents. Tourism, this is not a tourism, but what do you get from it? If you want to make it travel as a learning, it has to be carefully, like any other subject, the curriculum has to be worked out, the kind of criteria has to be worked out, the goals have to be worked out, it has to be evaluated, and it should be assessed and all that, and there should be some marks and grades or whatever it is. It has to go through the same rigor like other serious subjects. Otherwise, no matter what you say, it will be taken as the sightseeing tour. I'm not saying sightseeing tours are wrong, but sightseeing tours have their own parameters. If you want to make something as an experience and as a kind of learning, travel as a learning, it has to be orchestrated that way. It could be done. There is this book written by, I don't remember his name, but Chasing the Monsoon. You must have read, some of you. This book is marvelous. He only traveled with in this country, the rains start in the down south in Kerala and slowly move to towards Himalayas. The whole thing is wonderful. That experience he has written down in this book is very beautiful to read. But this is what is travel. This is travel documentation. This is travel experience. This is travel as a learning. But that way we are not using it. The other one is, we are also not using YouTube. I suddenly discovered in the last 2 years ago or 3 years ago, this man Dhruvarati is doing marvelous work. That is education. He does educational videos. And their videos are well researched, well articulated, good language. Everything is at all these norms which say good education. He kind of keeps to it. And he never goes to abuse and that kind of language. There is another fellow in Telugu, Kiran Prabha. He concentrates on film songs and some great books like Tolstoy and all that. But he is doing the well-researched, well-articulated. They are using the public media. And YouTube is free. You only have to bear with some advertisements which come now and then. There I normally skip it, but I see them. But I said, what a marvelous tool. What a marvelous tool. If you properly research it, YouTube is a marvelous tool. And the other one is, we are not sufficiently, the other day I think someone mentioned, one of the speakers mentioned that play should be there. Design should be fun. Design should not be very serious, grumpy thing. Charles Eames called his design studio, you know what? Circus. Beautiful name. Because like circus, everything goes. There is fun, there is joker, there is all kinds of things. But it is so serious because it's like the artists on the swing. Na? If they're the accuracy is so important. If they're half a second, millionth of a second, if they're late, then they will miss and they will fall down and the whole show will be over. So Charles Eames means that design should be a serious activity, but while doing it, you don't have to be serious. It could be all fun. So that is the kind of spirit we should keep in mind. And there should be some kind of mind-shaking courses, what I call them. For lack of any other word, I use the word mind-shake. Like mind-shake courses, like I have conducted some of them, bad design. Why we always talk about good design? We will have a bad design. Why you always talk about telling truth? You can have a play of telling lies. It's not easy to tell a lie. You try that. Telling a good lie. And, on and on like that. Like, theater. Theater has not been used well in teaching. It could be a marvelous tool because particularly I'm saying today when we have got these blinkers of computer and other screen oriented reality, we need the real reality, touch and feel kind of thing, where theater would be a marvelous tool. I've been advising many design schools to use theater as much as possible, the real touch and feel. Otherwise, very soon, we will be the emotionally kind of absent people who don't, if there is an accident happens, you go and take a picture and put it on social media, but you don't go and try to help. So this is a kind of a terrible situation. So we should have this mind shakers. You can think of, if you apply your mind, you will find many other courses like that. I have failure CV. One of my graduates given me idea, why we all go for only success. Why can't we have failure? So I said, what a good idea. So I immediately put my CV. Normally when you write a CV, you want to impress whoever it's going to. So say all those great achievements you got. Everybody has got great achievements. You are not special. You may have got more and some people have got less. That doesn't matter. That doesn't make them any less. In fact, today what you read about when I was asked to write a bio about myself, I said, hey, how many times I keep on telling how many awards I won and how many laudels I got and how many certificates I got. It looks very silly. I said, let me tell how I entered into design. So that's what you saw on the screen. So this is important. We don't have to be in a stereotyped way. So failure, I encourage all of you to write a failure CV. Why? It is not just for mind shaking or being something different. Because failure only tell you where you have gone wrong, why you have gone wrong, so it will guide you. Whereas your success will only make your head a little bigger, but nothing more. So, in fact, I avoid that. I think you all should have, a good design teacher should have a failure CV with him. Some company I was told, it taught us. They said if they appoint any person, new manager, if he hasn't done any mistake in the next 6 months, he will be sacked. Because that means he hasn't tried anything really important, or so he's just status quo is something which status quo and mediocrity are something we should keep it at a barge pole level away from us for a design if you want to be a good designer. So so there are two things I want to say before I conclude, that there are many concerns expressed in the last 2 days. How you face the future. Future is dark. No matter how well I'm a futurologist or how well I'm a science fiction writer, etc., only to little extent I can project, but I can never be sure. Nobody ever predicted that COVID will come. COVID came. Something else came. Nobody can ever be sure. So what do we do? What do we do then? My goodness, the future is coming. You don't have to worry. You see, the bird is never very worried about the branch on it is sitting might fall. It might fall because the bird never relied on the branch. The bird relied on its own strength of the wings. So please believe in don't worry about the technology or the markets going down and up and all that. These are the imaginary fears. You believe in your own wings. Get your wings stronger. Then you don't have to worry about the branch breaking of your weight. So this is important for you to remember. And for all the educators to remember, to make the students like that. Because don't give them something, because this is a new tool. AI is a new tool today, I will give you. But by the time they graduate after 5 years or 6 years, the world may be got something else. But if I give them good wings to fly, no matter what happens, they will still be flying. They won't fall to death. This is important. The other one, of course, also important is that the find meaning in life. I mentioned earlier that many suicides are happening in young people, particularly students. They are educated ones, because a loss of meaning. You have to find meaning. Finding meaning is not a great big philosophy. In simplest terms, it is you love what you do or do what you love. If you can't, it's not possible. You have to earn also. I agree that. But then find some time to tend a dog, tend a little plant, tend something. It may be some such silly thing. It's not a silly thing. That is what it gives meaning to you. So this I will give to everyone. I'm not a kind of counselor, life counselor, but I think this is something. Finding meaning is inside you. It is not outside you. Finding meaning is getting your wings also in another way, stronger inside strength. Then you will find. You must have read this book, In Search of Meaning by Frankl. He has gone through the terrible thing of World War II, German torture chamber. He has gone very close to death. When he came out, he said, why he lived, many times he questioned. And this answer he wrote in this book. Why he lived after all this torture. He would have died, no? It's better to die rather than bearing that torture. So that tells you what is the meaning of life. Yeah. He has come up with something called logotherapy. I'm not going to tell about that. But the search for meaning we all have. We are searching for meaning, whether we agree or not. And if you find that meaning, life is wonderful. That no matter what happens, what government comes, what government falls. But after saying that, I will immediately say Politics is not a four-letter word. I said this 20 years ago when I wrote my book, Thinking Design. Because many things depend on, after all this thing, we are kind of governed by some bigger organization, and the blessings of that organization are important. We all know the story of Bauhaus, how it has got closed, hounded from Weimar to Dessau, and then finally got closed. We all know also the same, another great design school from Germany, Ulm, how it was kind of finally got closed. All this, and this will happen anywhere. As Judge Shantayana very beautifully said, if you don't remember the past, you will be condemned to repeat it. And that's very great. I mean, if you really look at it, it's a terrifying statement on politics or on any situation in life. I think we all should remember it. And politics are important, and only with politics certain things could be done. Mr. Chatterjee knows 1979 we wanted to have a design council in this country. It took nearly 32 years. In 2007 we got the design council finally. We have got Make in India, but we never had design in India. Yeah. So these are many things which, if the governments could do wonders, but how to influence the government is all in our hands. Yes. I'm not a politician here. I can't give solutions, political solutions. But I'm only reminding you the importance of politics. Never shy away. I used to observe, and I myself used to do. I confess, I used to be away from the politics. I said, no, politics, that's a dirty thing. No, we should not go into it. Sex is a dirty word, but without it, you can't live. We must understand that politics is exactly like that. That's why I said that word. Politics is not a four-letter word, but is as important. So I think this we have to take cognizance of this. And I started, you must write, that is another thing. I started doing it. Many people will advise you today, and as they were advising me, why are you writing still? Who will read the books? Nowadays nobody writes. Only oldies like Chatterjee and Mr. Balram write. But I am not writing for you to read. I am writing to leave it as a heritage. One day somebody will read because it is just there. If it is not there, if I just talk, it will just vanish. So, but it is there with the hope that one day it might make some meaning. Even otherwise, it already made its meaning because I enjoyed the writing. So I would encourage many design teachers and design students to reflect on it, write, even if you afterwards don't publish it, doesn't matter. Like I have another book on history of Indian design, which is kind of visual chronology. I wanted to do it, I've done it. It may not be ever published, doesn't matter. I enjoyed doing it. I learned so much in the process. Yeah. I'm sure Taptida and others will know the joy of discovery. Yeah, you're not doing it for others. Others will do it as a kind of, that is a second benefit, but actually you're doing it for yourself. So that you all should continue. I started my talk with Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore's quote. I want to end it also, another Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore's quote. Since I am talking about the politics, he did very beautiful thing about that. I will never allow patriotism to triumph over humanity. With that, I thank you, all of you, and I conclude my talk. Me. Are there any questions? Yes, sure. I would love to. All together.
Sir, we'll have the Q&A session post
Yeah, sure.
this.
I will go see.
Thank you so much, sir. especially for chalking out the issues and some silent issues like mental health and the problems with old age and so on. So our next speaker is an extraordinary mind in the field of design, Professor Raja Mohanty. With a big round of applause, please.
Mr. Raja Mohanty graduated as an electrical engineer from IIT Bombay, studied visual communication for the masters at IDC, and did his doctoral work at art history from MS University, Baroda. For the last 2 decades, he has been a member of the faculty at the IDC School of Design, IIT Bombay, offering courses in communication design, ceramics, and aesthetics. He has been a creator of handcrafted books and also a potter. With a huge round of applause, let's welcome Professor Raja Mohanty, sir. jack.
The audio. You also need that, or you don't need that? The HDMI.
For the audio.
HDMI doesn't have.
Yeah,
one?
audio is this side. স্ক্রিনটা করে Sir, it's on.
All right.
Mic.
Yes, thank you. All right. Many years ago, when I was completing my studies at IDC, for my final project, I had worked on a short film, and I will take the liberty of sharing the first part of the film. And hopefully, I will have a few things to say after that, which will be I'll try and be brief. So let me, could you please put the lights down on the screen, because it's, yeah. Thank you. Not getting audio. Shall I play? Yeah.
पापा कहते हैं बदनाम करेगा बेटा हमारा ऐसा काम करेगा मगर ये कोई न जाने ये मेरी मंजिल है कहाँ। पापा कहते हैं बड़ा नाम करेगा बेटा हमारा ऐसा काम करेगा अगर ये तो कोई न जाने ये मेरी मंजिल है कहाँ। पापा कहते हैं बड़ा नाम करेगा कब यार अपने सबके दिलों में अरमाए है बैठे लेके अब यार अपने सबके दिलों में अरमाए है वो जिंदगी में कल क्या बनेगा हर एक नजर का सपना ये है कोई सीनियर का काम करेगा बिजनेस में कोई अपना नाम करेगा मगर ये तो कोई न जाने ये मेरी मंजिल है कहाँ है बड़ा नाम करेगा
I'll just skip to the last part of the film. Skip the middle. It's kind of like a triptych in a painter's terminology. And let me just skip to the last part of the film. Okay, let me just run. I'll share the link should you be interested in watching.
Can at most provide a helping hand, a word of encouragement when the child falters. But what schools go about doing is instilling fear, suppressing any traits that are not in keeping with the expected. Look at what they have done to your minds.
Oh, where do you come from? You little drops of rain, pitter patter, down the window pane. They won't let me walk They won't let me play, and they won't let me out of doors today.
Do not believe them when they tell you that fences have to be built, that locks are but practical. Enjoy the land, but own it not. It is through a want of enterprise and faith that men are what they are, buying and selling and spending their lives as serfs.
So could we have the lights, please? So just to take a cue from Indro's presentation yesterday, where he chose to read instead of showing us images, I've already shown you some images, I will share some more, but I will also do a little bit of reading from some notes I just put down. The title that was given to me was to speak of new perspectives in design. Today is the World Industrial Design Day. And in cricket, to be the 9th or the 10th or the 11th batsman can be both a blessing and a curse. If the openers and the middle order batting have done well, nobody really minds if I score a duck. Yeah, if you score a duck. So also in conferences. And since here at the Sister Nivedita University, the score looks very healthy. Thanks to the insightful deliveries on day 1, 2, and today by Professor Balram in the morning, much has been said, and therefore I should be pardoned by all of you if I have nothing much to offer. Just to take that analogy from cricket, Professor Chatterjee opened the innings with some electric hitting, cautioning us gently to have clarity while teaching art and design. This warning is very much in order when young design students harbor the misconception that they are also artists. You meet them all the time claiming to be artists today. Very simply and very eloquently, he pointed out that design is not about the I, but about the we. Now, for artists, subjectivity, idiosyncrasy, at times even flamboyance might actually be a virtue. But for a designer has to learn the difficult art of disappearing, of being absent, of listening, sensing, be prepared for criticism and feedback while putting out some prototype. Charles Eames and Professor Balram mentioned this in the morning, cautioned us also that while designing, one should be wary of donning the artist's hat. And it was reassuring to be reminded of that all this is still true. At students at the Industrial Design Center, we used to dread the feedback session when Professor Sudhakar Nadkarni walked in with cigarette in hand or at times a pipe to peer at our work. And an explanation, if it was not provided for a tiny dot that you may have put, well, that often got a reprimand, a sharp rebuke. Now, this may seem surprising because Professor Nadkarni was himself a graduate of the Sir J.J. School of Art. Whatever have been his experiences at JJ, his visit to Ulm in Germany transformed him, and to this day, I can say, and he's the same transformed person that he was. And he carries with him the clarity that design, as Professor Chatterjee underlined, is all about service. It appears that this distrust towards anything that was subjective was misunderstood by many who went on to teach at IDC as being an attitude that was anti-art. To this day, some of my colleagues, knowing my love for the arts, tell me that at IDC we don't do art, it's a design school. What does puzzle them, however, is Professor Nadkarni seems to be fond of me for some reason. When as a very young teacher, I wanted to exhibit some paintings at IDC, he was very happy and supportive. As the head of the design department at IIT Guwahati, he used his discretion to ensure that a good friend of mine now, Professor Utpal Barua, a painter whose exhibition he visited, was offered a faculty position there. Clearly, Nadkarni understood that to nurture the sensitivity of an artist to line, to color, to form, and to materials, and to people and to the world around us was essential for the study of design. He wanted printmakers and theater actors to open out new ways of seeing. But when a student uttered mumbo jumbo while attempting a design solution, they got the stick. And that's metaphorically, of course. That's about Professor Nadkarni. I was fortunate to have another teacher, Professor R.K. Joshi, and in a very loving way, I say that he was a madman who was possessed by type and typography, by brushes, by ink and calligraphy. And he too came from the Sir J.J. School of Art, but he was an artist, though he never said so himself. He loved poetry, he loved the Dadaists, he uttered things that I often didn't understand, and it doesn't matter. To see a teacher who is possessed, or to use Professor Balram's metaphor, a candle that is burning is sufficient. Professor R.K. Joshi introduced IDC to the world of Indian letter forms. And unlike the Roman alphabet, which just has 26 characters, Indian letter forms have several characters, half characters, conjuncts, and matras. To design a font in an Indian language is no joke. And Professor R.K. Joshi initiated the important activity of designing fonts in various Indian languages. The third teacher, and I don't speak of them in any sequence, that I hold in great esteem, and he's held in great esteem by the design community, is Professor Mohan Bhandari, who formulated what has come to be known as the foundation program in NID before coming to IDC to teach. He taught a course for me when I was in my foundation year, and he made me repeat a color exercise, which I thought I had done very well. And I almost had a act of protest, but then I saw what he was saying, and over time, I really got to appreciate the feedback that he had to give. But the one wonderful thing that I remember with Professor Bhandari is that he gifted me a book of poems by the Austrian poet Rilke. Now, poetry can devastate a young mind by its ability to penetrate into life and extract from it what we may call as art. And art is something that in its noblest manifestations contains in it the power to elevate us, to evoke a sense of wonder, or touch us and move us to tears, or at times to even disgust or horror, as the Natya Shastra mentions the 9 principal emotions that art can contain. And to those 9, scholars have suggested that we may add a 10th for our times, the rasa of alienation, that often characterizes modernity and modern life. Which, in a sense, does bring me to a little bit of wariness, though having been in a design school for 20 years, I have about design and in particular industrial design. The best design is invisible, quite the opposite of what is suggested by the phrase designer label. There you want to forefront that you are the designer, but good design is actually invisible. Good design is very evident today if you travel through Europe or through Japan, where public transport, living habitats, and other things that make the act of daily living pleasant is very visible. But, and here I'm being a little critical of where we have failed, I feel, including us at IDC. Despite several decades of NID and NIFT and IDC, such an organization of our towns and cities in India is not evident at all. One might regard such an accusation as being grossly unfair. Europe was barbaric in its colonial phase and built much of its wealth by looting. Japan too was a colonizer. And if one looks carefully, one shall find good design even in India. In its exquisite saris and textiles, in the polished floors and furniture and cutlery of its 5-star and 7-star hotels. And despite what travelers might say, even in the first-class cabins of the Dreamliner airplanes. Despite the near absence of good design in our public infrastructure, we do associate the Tatas and the Kirloskars and the Bajaj with good, if not the best design. So what does this tell us? It possibly suggests that when it comes to all things private and personal, India is comparable with the best anywhere. In our public lives, however, we have a very long way to go. Strangely, the idea of private and public is echoed when we use the word I and we, or when we say art and design. Europe and Japan have understood this to a large extent. They have cultivated both the private and the public, but what we regard as a good quality of life today okay, so what I'm trying to say here is that when the world over we want to have a better quality of life, we are referring largely to the external material attributes of life. And in India, thanks to the centuries of dwelling, but is it possible that, 7 billion or 8 billion or how many of us are there on the planet, is it possible to aspire for a better material quality of life when we just have one planet? Yeah. So though people love to say that they can balance growth and sustainability, it is not very evident looking at examples, let's say, from abroad, if it is possible to replicate such a similar quality of life for people, or everyone on Earth. And certainly things like, car design, which is in great demand today from students and offered by most design institutes, it's not at all evident if it's a good idea to have cars as a dream for all Indians when our public transport is in a really poor shape. In India, thanks to centuries of dwelling on the meaning of all things, once upon a time at least, we saw the difference. We didn't see much difference between nature and ourselves. Balance and harmony and inner joys is how we understood the essence of life. However, the global zeitgeist has now unsettled human beings worldwide, whether it's in America, in Israel, in Russia, in Ukraine, in Iran, in China, in Japan, in Pakistan, and in India too. And the 21st century humankind come across as slaves of what has been called as advanced capitalism. And strangely and paradoxically, this nurtures the I. Capitalism rests on nurturing the private, the I, in some sense. And communism did speak of the we, but that died long ago. Did it not? But maybe it didn't. And the future depends, therefore, not just on how a few privileged human beings achieve the I-we balance, but how humankind itself achieves the I-we balance that Professor Chatterjee was talking about. One serious ailment India suffers from is the persistence of an obnoxious and hierarchical view deeply embedded in its caste, class, gender, and religious divides. If we wish to organize our water supply, our roads, our habitats in a more functional and aesthetic manner, we need to value what our hands can do and not just the high ideas that our heads dream of. Well, I have a couple more pages, but I think I will skip that and I'll share just a few images and end my talk. So I say very tentative musings because, at times I often do feel that after having taught for 20 odd years, I actually don't have anything significant or much to say because the forces that shape our lives are very, very complex and I can't claim to have any good understanding of it. So whatever I say in a very tentative, hesitant manner. Those are the three teachers that I refer to. On the left here, Professor Nadkarni, Professor Joshi, and Professor Bhandari. Professor Nadkarni was an institution builder of sorts. He started IDC, then IIT Guwahati, and then also started design management at the Wellington School. That was Professor Joshi, some examples of his work. And that's a little bit of Professor Bhandari. I had brought along some images of work done by members of the faculty at IDC, and I'll very briefly speak. On the top left, you see a woman carrying a gamela. The gamela was chosen by Professor Nadkarni as the first product that IDC designed because he felt that the grip could be better. It was not ergonomic enough, and it also was a statement of sorts. The design is meant for a certain kind of people. It's not necessarily always to do with fashion and so on. Down below that, you see the ballot box, which was designed by Professor Rao and Professor Puvaya. There are some other examples that you may be familiar with. The rupee sign on the top right, you have an animated film, which was a remake of Gopi Gain Baghabain by Shilpa Ranade. There is a board design, and on the bottom left, there is a virtual museum set up for Ajanta, viewing Ajanta, where you can, in the National Museum in Delhi, hold a device and experience Ajanta. And at the bottom right, there was a memorial made to the marchers who accompanied Gandhiji at Dandi, done by Professor Trivedi. Some more examples, design of a keyboard, a map design for Bombay locals, font design, a Chanda Mama and some books and a cycle rickshaw, examples of virtual reality, handheld puppets made from silkworm cocoons, some examples of films done by colleagues. And that is a very quick snapshot of the kind of variety that IDC has had. One good thing about the IITs is that the autonomy that's given to faculty is wonderful. Nobody, even the director, doesn't interfere in the way we teach, in the way we conduct our exam and what we do. But having lived there for many years, having looked at this closely, there are certain shortcomings I would want to very briefly touch on. And what shortcoming I feel when I kind of look more closely, in fact, is that though a lot of these projects may claim to be design projects, that is to say they are we projects and not I projects, but I'm not very sure if that's really true. Yeah. Why do I say so? I would think that we have fetishized what we call as we in our times, at least from many of our colleagues, and we imagine the real. We don't have any real contact with what's really real, but we imagine the real, and the construction of we, as I noticed in our own institution at times, at least in my eyes, is extremely suspect. Is it not true that most of us who teach and are taught have been co-opted by the forces that we often cannot see? and is referred to as the military-industrial complex, or we speak of the hegemony of the capitalist system. But these are big words. Students, we therefore have fashionable subjects today: UI, UX, virtual realities, AI, and so on. But I would think, how does one sort of grapple with very, very complex and big forces such as those that you can't see? And the one answer that seems to have some sense, make some sense to me, is in my own understanding of how I use my power and privilege. Can I do that with a little more self-awareness? Can I do that with a little more grace? And here I would fault designers for ignoring an understanding of their own self, of where they come from before they set out to solve problems. It were almost as though they were God-appointed saviors of the world, and very dubious very often in their framing of the problem. They're not sensitive to the world at large. They look at a very narrow section of society when they frame their problems, and that's extremely dubious. I'm being critical here of my own colleagues, of my own institutions, without naming them, nothing personal here. But that is a characteristic of our times, perhaps, that we live so much in our heads that we don't sense what is really, really needed to make a better world. And to begin, it's always good to begin in one's own way of life and to understand, instead of, again, making big demons of the standard thing that we love to beat, be it caste or religion or gender, can we understand power and privilege as it resides in us, and how we use that? So that's roughly what I have to say. And when you do not understand much, it is best to admit this and go slow. That's a lovely little thing that I saw in Auroville. I was in Auroville recently. It's a lovely place. So some things that we do try at IDC is to get students in contact with indigenous designers who possess great knowledge. It would be wonderful, as Professor Chatterjee was suggesting, if we can appoint as full professors some of these master craftsmen, potters, weavers, metalsmiths in our IITs, and make a statement to the country that we respect them, not just offer them professor of practice or some visiting contract and things like that. We are far away from that because our biases are deeply embedded, and that's the despair. One doesn't really have any clue as to how to demolish and highlight those biases that we all carry. So on that note, I will pause today. Thank you very much. Yeah. Just give me a second.
Yes, sure. I have minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Professor Mohanty, for your energetic speech. And our next speaker for this session is multidisciplinary force in art, design, scenography, and education, Mr. Swarup Dotto. Mr. Swarup Dotto is a multidisciplinary artist, multidisciplinary designer, educator, practitioner, and craft activist, whose work spans fashion, photography, craft revival, and scenography, heritage conservation. A graduate of NIFT with a master's in fashion and textiles from Nottingham and Trent University, UK, he began his journey under British designer Sir Paul Smith. His commitment to design education has seen him hold various academic roles at NIFT As Dean of Academics at the Indian Institution of Craft and Design, he helped shape curricula that merge traditional knowledge systems with contemporary pedagogy. His artistic practice is deeply collaborative, rooted in long-term engagements with craft practitioners to create socially responsive, contextually grounded work. Swarup has led training initiatives impacting over 5,000 artisans and co-developed the course Crafting Luxury and Lifestyle Business with IIM Ahmedabad. His restoration projects include the Calcutta Bungalow, Rani Mahal at the Belgaria Palace, Mayurbhanj, and the Bengal Paddle. As founder curator of the India Story and other craft initiatives, he continues to center craft in design, discourse, and public engagement. With a huge round of applause, please welcome Mr. Swarup Datta, sir. The stage is yours.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I think after these 3 days of deliberation and being the last speaker, it's difficult, after so many stalwarts have spoken extensively on the subject. So the way forward for me was to then fall back upon earnest observations from my own practice and how I have treaded this space because, I've been a design practitioner, an educator, practice scenography, fashion communication. We run a small advertising agency, and I work in the sector of crafts, with various artisans. Do you know how to get this back on? So we're also all products of the system that we've come through, and it is a bit of an apology. So for me, it's important that I reflect upon all the biases that I have personally experienced, and how we've kind of treaded this whole position of power, perhaps, especially when we work with artisans, and how that's kind of shaped my personal practice. But before I go on to talking about that, of course, a bit of history, just recapping what we've already deliberated upon as the fact that in pre-colonial India, craft was the economy. This, of course, we're talking about the pre-industrialization era. It's interesting how craft was practiced as barter, as a patron craft, and also, as you could see, as an interesting souvenir. And religion have been an interesting part of it. Yeah. Yes. Hello. So, and religion have been an interesting part of it. One interesting thing that I wanted to share was that whenever I look at the way we're looking at crafts, we've always looked at it predominantly a skill set and a repository of skills rather than knowledge. From the colonial era, even through our design educations, I feel that we've not really given the artisan the due diligence that we should have. Of course, just contextualizing, we are from Bengal, and so pre-colonial era, the richest Suba, 15 Subas during Akbar, the richest at that time, 22 Subas in Shah Jahan's time, still the richest. And it's interesting that, the craftsman was also the designer, because he was mitigating the space between the two. And the product that was created was so beautiful and was also consumed both by men and women. You know, a lot of time you would think, especially when it comes to textile, that the consumers would be women, but in this case, men do played a great role. And so muslins from Bengal definitely have reached, across the globe. So the colonial violence, and we had deliberations on the first day on it. Of course, initially it looked at craft as an interesting skill set from where you could extract commerce, number one. Number two, later on when they decided that they can institutionalize learning, it was interesting, and we saw in the deliberations how we looked at artisans as someone who would give you skill sets, but not exactly the knowledge base, and a lot of grounding of craft practices also comes from religious and spiritual practices. And I feel that it was completely ignored at that time, and even in later sort of modernistic frameworks, where we decided certain things to be unscientific, and we've not listened to the entire story perhaps. And we'll come to some examples of it later on. Of course, we're looking at, post-colonial revival and pedagogy of crafts, and why it's important also was predominantly as providing livelihoods in the rural sector. So here, I just had one thing to say, which is that, while we co-create, and as Professor Mohanty was talking about, this whole art of we is quite interesting, because at the end, while we're co-creating, who then has the authorship? And I think we, from the design fraternity, kind of go a little soft on that. We ignore it. We don't really want to talk about it, because the authorship at the end remains in most time with someone who holds power. And in this case, in the framework, it is the designer. It's also a personal observation that, the hierarchies that are there in India through which we look at crafts is quite interesting, because the practitioners predominantly come from backward classes. And so, culturally, we've always looked at, practicing with hand with certain disdain. And that with the colonial layer, goes one layer further. So it's quite interesting how even at schools, there is not much that's happened. And so, how do you develop empathy? You only do it when you create yourself, that you know how much, effort goes into making something. So it's interesting that we do carry these hegemonies into our design practices, where a lot of designers who come from urban pockets don't then want to indulge with the material and doing things. And then there's an interesting hierarchy where, it becomes, oh, I am the designer and you're supposed to be creating the object. And that distinction is quite interestingly seen in design practice as well as in art practice, where they're not co-collaborators. And so somebody who's creating with hand is not given equal importance. Of course, in design colleges, we always go through this whole, level go through processes where we look at material and process and manipulation. But over the period of our practice, this distinct line, I personally feel, develops, where whoever is making is then deemed inferior. And that bias, I think, we should address. So as I was talking about, that bias is embedded in caste, class, rural, urban, colonial, and post-colonial structures. And this is one example of how we actually go to indigenous practice, and we basically appropriate it with impunity. This is the latest example, which happened just last week, where Prada showed Kolhapuri chappals on the runway without acknowledging anyone. And then there was a huge backlash, and they were made to acknowledge it, but it was only after the backlash. And it doesn't only happen with brands abroad, it's also a certain privilege that we carry, that we go to these repository of knowledge, and then we take it with impunity without giving enough credit. And I feel that, it's not only a practice that is there with, people or brands of privilege which come and take things globally and don't acknowledge communities, but it also happens in India rampantly. While I'm talking about fashion and I'm talking about appropriation, this is a very interesting example from India itself, and a brand which works with Chanakya School, which is in Mumbai, and they collaborate with Dior, and authorship is given to both. And you're seeing Madhvi Parikh's artworks also, which were showcased at the show, and they were fully embroidered pieces. So it's quite an interesting sort of place where you have artisanal technique, artists who are visible, artisans who are visible, designers who want to acknowledge the collaborations, and very interesting, fruitful examples emerge. So why are artisans often hidden? You would see interesting images of skill, the hand, but in most cases you don't see the faces. And it's a troubling situation. Like when I look at images like that, where, we never zoom out, it always is zoomed in. So while you're celebrating what's being created with the hand, you're also dehumanizing the entire process, because the emphasis always at the hand. And you would see multiple images like this where you would say, oh, we've collaborated with so and so, but the imagery is always these tight shots of things being produced or certain skill set being shown. I mean, I did talk about so the frameworks is how do we work together, with artisans, and can there be certain interesting frameworks that we can devise? Obviously, there is a power asymmetry which exists, and so whoever holds power then also holds authorship in today's world. But that dynamics also can change, and I'll come to that, because I do work with artisans with that sort of honesty, where there are no legal frameworks, but we work on trust, and then it does happen that there is a breach of trust, but it's a process, and you have to then engage and express your disappointment, if I may say so, But in most cases, yes, the power is with the designer. So what happens when the trust breaks? We just have to realize that, like us, they're also human beings, so all the rules that govern us also are, are something that are their concerns. They also want autonomy, fame, money. And so we have to treat them in that sense as equals, and then negotiate, a space. Yeah, and one thing I do want to talk about is, is to try and derive this framework. Can there be failures? Yes, and I've failed multiple times myself, and I'm trying to still evolve a framework which then is equitable to both. And I think I'll just skip this and go to to certain practices, which I feel would self-illustrate the pedagogy of the process. One part of it is to listen. And I feel that what happens is a lot of time we don't listen fully. Professor Mohanty was just talking about that part of it, so I'll just give you an interesting example. This is a small curatorial experiment that we did where we had artists, artisans, designers participate together and co-create, and everyone was visible, in terms of credits. So I'll just come to this interesting example. I work with Dinajpur mask artist. It's from Uttar Dinajpur in Bengal. And you would see these two interesting variety of masks that you would see there. So what you see on the right is the traditional mask. For what you see on the left is a fabricated mask, which is a new phenomena. And it's interesting how the artist would actually visit a designer/artist studio, and they would go through African masks that are being, that was featured in the book. And the artist, Abhijit Gupta, mentioning them that, oh, you are not present when somebody sees your mask, so is there a story that you can tell? And that's interesting how then they adopted and made these masks with a little bit of narrative on top. And of course, because the eyes are not cut, you know that they're not ritualistic masks. But you also see that, the facial anatomy is very different from the people who are making it. It's, in fact, very alien to it. But today in Calcutta and across India, it's this mask, which is on the left-hand side, which is taken as the original Dinajpur mask. And we don't know the distinctions between the two. So what I'm saying is, it's interesting, why is it that you don't see the ones which are on the right? Because the ritualistic masks were too gory for the urban audience. And so we've decided to eliminate and only extract the skill and make something of it, to make it palatable to us. So it was with this, with Tulu that I've been doing work for a long time. The boy on the right is Tulu. And so, yeah, like apart from their own ritualistic mask, this is what they make to make a living. So I was there with them, when the farmer protests were happening, and I asked them, asked Tulu basically that, where do you go and sell your produce? And Tulu basically said that, we sell it outside the mandis because it takes about 1.5 months for us to get the money, and it's very difficult for us to sustain for that period, and there is a lot of paperwork. And so I asked him as to what is it that he would like to have, and he said a cold storage. And so this is his version of a cold storage, and it's called a himghar. And so it's quite interesting that, a lot of time the conversations decide on the kind of shapes the product would take. And interestingly, you would see a seam line vertically because they make masks, so they cut it into half and join the two. But over a period of time, he developed the skill to scoop out the entire interior and make a product. So it's interesting how slowly you can use the same skill set without imposing your language, can create interesting so-called object. Now you could look at these objects in the realm of critical design, maybe, and not purely as functional objects. So this is another one where we were in conversation together, and the typography is something that I introduced, but this is his interpretation, and quite an interesting way of basically showing the whole farming process. So this is another interesting example. They basically make Kali imagery a lot, and because it was, we were basically talking about at one end the hunger index in India, and also how consumption in rural sectors is going up in terms of food consumption. So it's quite a dichotomy there. But all of this developed while I was having conversations with them. This is another interesting body of work that Tulu produced, which was basically called Andhbhaks. So it's quite interesting that, it was at the fringe of, Dinajpur is the fringe where two parties in this state are kind of fighting it out, and that's the sort of a boundary line that's being drawn there, because, and he was quite frustrated with the entire thing, and he said, some of them look this way, some of them look the other way, but nobody knows what is being offered. And so this is a series that Tulu developed. And so all of this were basically sitting, talking, conversations, and then in a way, like certain knowledge sort of being fed in, and then these interesting creations coming in. But as you can see, all of them don't have the eye. As soon as you put the eye, it becomes a ritualistic mask. It's another small collaboration which happened with Meenakshi, who's a faculty here, with the Mithai Chapwalas. So she basically used it to create an interesting form. And it was actually called Sandesh, and its reverse means Sandesh, or a message. And so it's quite interesting how we can use traditional vocabulary and still have interesting sort of voices. To that, I made a piece with the same artisans. These were called the Khatta Meetha box. And you could choose, so while we had some molds, sweet molds, we also had some molds which were not so sweet. I'll talk about another small collaboration, and I'm trying to show examples which are slightly non-linear. This was me in Jaipur looking at how these beautiful armatures were made before the skin was put on at the Shera. And I clicked these imagery which, were beautiful. I loved the lines that came through. Especially the armature lines were fantastic. And this kind of stayed with me. And years later, I kind of tried working with typography and bamboo, for certain projects. And make decorative objects. And of course, also the logo of the event in fashion too. The same. And this is Binod. Binod works with me. He's an urban craft practitioner, from Dompada, as we call it. They work with bamboo and they make sculptural forms, and which is within the city. This is another sort of notion. We always think of craft as rural practices, and we don't acknowledge, city clusters at all. And so I call this entire process very collaborative, because, I would actually send some random images to Binod, and I would tell him to react to it. And he would make something, and, as you can see, he will wear, and he'll tell somebody to send photos of the same back to me. And this kind of continued for about 6 months, and we kind of did an interesting sort of an installation of wireframes. And with the objects later, I kind of reduced them. I shot pictures which were reductionary in terms of detail, so that they almost look like prints. But what was interesting was then to take these images back to their quarters and do an exhibition there and have a conversation. So it was interesting that they were creating something. I was adding a layer to it and then taking it back. And there was an interesting conversation that was happening. And of course, same practitioners then assuming a more sort of sculptural, decorative forms. This would be the last example that I wanted to cite, one of my more naive ones, my initial sort of, collaborative projects. This was a restaurant in Calcutta called Jhal Phrase, and it was my first sort of restorative endeavor. I've done a couple more, one being Calcutta Bungalow, which also, is a townhouse in the north of the city. And the rooms, there are only 6 rooms there. Interestingly, each one focuses on one pada of craft practice, in the city. So we have Potua Pada, Boi Pada, and many. So there are, so all these padas were addressed. So we also wanted to dispel this whole idea of practices being rural, and look at historically how they were practiced within the city. But Jhal Phrase was one of the first projects that I had done, which was my restorative sort of endeavor. And downstairs, we basically wanted to have a space where we would sell, they wanted to sell Indian street food. And so this question emerged, what is the street culture of Calcutta? And we came to the conclusion that maybe what your driver is listening to when you're not in the car is what should be considered the street culture. And we looked at marrying 2 interesting practices. One is Kalighat pot, because and that sort of addresses one issue that AC was talking about, that do you look at your context, what do you have, how do you incorporate that? So interestingly, as a young practitioner, I remember Jyotindra Jain Ji had done a lecture on Kalighat pot around the same time, and I had the opportunity of listening to him. And he talked about the fact how it was an evolving practice, and that the Potuas would come and be around Kalighat temple because of commerce, and they would get business, and they would initially sell religious imagery, but later on they became all the scandalous imagery of all the scandals that was happening in the city. So it was kind of like a gossip tabloid of sorts. So then you have the liberty perhaps to then take it a step further, and that's what we actually did. And what we did was we took these, so Uttam Potua, who's quite famous now, he was a young boy then, and we collaborated on it. And we made these interesting posters. And the lyrics came from salacious Bhojpuri songs, and the imagery was Kalighat pot. And it was just an interesting play. It's also interesting why we chose the salacious Bhojpuri songs, because, industrial labor, a lot of them would come from Bihar and, into Bengal, and most of them will come without their families. And they'll stay in these messes, where mostly men would be there. So beyond work, most of their expressions were sexual, and it's interesting how they went back to to their native land, and that also became an interesting vocabulary then later on, of mainstream Bhojpuri cinema and song now. And so this is how we basically used it in physical space. So, yeah, I'm still working on a framework where we can work together. I've had many instances where, let's say, we've generated ideas together, but the authorship have been, for my comfort, I would feel, not given to me, but I've sort of negotiated that space. But that's a constant conversation that I have. But it's interesting to then have them as collaborators and give them that space instead of dunking them down. Anyway. And while I showed my practice, I just wanted to show some other practices who are doing the same. Sandeep Sangaru, who runs Sangaru Design, work with bamboo artisans, and a lot of them name the artisans who created the designs along with him. Studio Copper has a, if you go to their website, have a section where, you know, the artisans who made the products are, you know, are highlighted with whoever's created, and it's quite a collaborative process, you know, apart from some of the products which they've developed. Akaro, Gaurav J. Gupta, who's been working with artisans to create very, very interesting textile pieces, again, where authorship is acknowledged. 1111 clothing. Rang Sutra is another example where artisans go themselves and, you know, understand the need of the market and then come back and design. Phantom Hands is an interesting project where we're looking at, you know, old Piaget chairs, and they've traced down the same artisans and they're recreating the designs again with the same artisans who had created the original designs, some of them being very old. Some art practices where Thakral and Tagra does a lot of work with artisans. This I thought was a particularly interesting one where Gauri had taken the photographs and then Rajesh Vangad had then drawn over the imagery, you know, juxtaposing the conversation. And Somaya Kala Vidya, which I think all of you would know, who are basically teaching and producing artisan designers. So my closing thoughts are that, you know, craft is not the other, you know, in the subcontinent. It is it. We borrowed from it, be it from, you know, be it from design or art, but we've not really acknowledged, and we've borrowed with impunity without giving credit. And I think that also comes from a sense of privilege, which I think we should stop, you know. And I just feel that if we could build ecosystems where artisans, designers, design practitioners can come together, have this conversation over authorship, you know, I think would be a great way forward. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'd request Balaram sir and Raja Mohanty sir, along with Sharup Dotto sir, for a quick Q&A session. We'll take very few questions, and then later we can discuss over lunch as well.
Volunteers can give you the mic if you have any questions.
Hello, good afternoon. So, Shivam this side, and thank you so much for such an insightful plenary session and the talk. So my question is about when specifically today we had discussed on the fact of I and we. When it comes to design, it's a service more than an art. I'd like to know your thoughts upon how, if we can reflect on ancient India as a country or as a philosophy, I can say, because in that preliminary times in India, art was the practice of service only. And we have got many mentioning about the same when it comes to the volumes like Manasollasa or Chitra Sutram. In the chapters of Chitrakara Swarupam or Chitrakara Lakshanam, they have depicted artists or art in that way. So why is there a need of a discrimination or bifurcation of art and design today? And what are your thoughts on our own rooted practices? Thank you.
Earlier, am I audible? Yeah. I think the earlier it has come as a kind of a practice which is done generations together, as from father to daughter to father to son to sons, that way. But it is not kind of, it is done, if at all it's given as a service, it is to the local local areas. It is kind of, now the situations that they are kind of giving the service to some unknown. I mean, the community is not known to them. Whereas if the earlier, that is the way it is done, and it is done. The vocabulary, the language of the craft, etc., it has come from generations of practice. It's not from the written, but it's all kind of given through their fathers and forefathers. So that is the main difference between now and then. Now, I mean, they are going anywhere. The problem seems to be many times that not knowing the real need of the person whom they are catering to, always.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please.
I just wanted to also add to this that, you see, it's I did talk about it in bits. The fact that, who are you making it for also assumes importance. Of course, if you're a craftsperson who's creating, you're also the designer in the context, because you understand who you're making it for, what's the purpose of it, and you're very in close proximity. But also a lot of, and so of course, I mean, I'll address that in the next part. But I think what's important is, think if I'm a stapati and I am creating a sculpture, I'm already meditating to say I'm a medium. So you're surrendering yourself. So you would always offer your best to whatever you're making, or let's say if I'm making a kantha, which I know would then be given to my daughter, right? You would put in your best. The same is with the fulkari, right? So a lot of these practices, the intent of who you're making it also defines the quality that comes through. A lot of time what is happening is commerce now, obviously, you're looking at how many man hours am I putting, what is it that I'm getting? And then that does disrupt, if you don't take pride or the intent is commerce, then obviously there is a dilution. Yeah, so, I mean, I would say there is qualitative dilution, at a larger scale, is because the intent has also changed.
I see it as a kind of cultural disconnect, no? If it is earlier, it is in the same culture, you are part of that culture. But if it is suddenly, if it is somebody else in Europe or somewhere else, then there is a disconnect. Because these are all rooted in the culture. That I think we should recognize.
Well, I think possibly if one looks at industrialization process, which possibly dates back some 500 years in Europe, and what it did to humankind, and in some sense the forefronting of the individual, which begins with that, where the notion of service gets very much diluted and often lost. So there's a break of community, there's a break of any kind of fellow feeling. And I would attribute that, though it might be a little romantic, in some good measure to 500 years of industrialization. And now, for example, when one visits, let's say, an art show, it's a small circle which seems to speak that language and share that language, and the world at large doesn't understand the language. So there's a loss of community. So art, in its essence, was more universal, I think. But the loss, and that loss happens because we want to forefront our signature style or our individuality. So till at a future point where one can refashion what communities are, why does one make, we'll have to live with this loss, I would think, so.
Can I say something?
Please.
One thing that I would like to point out is maybe there is little difference in terms of, that's what I see, I could be wrong also, that when it starts with putting it for fashion, there's so much of my designs coming up. While at NID, what we did is, like, I worked on natural indigo, and at that time when looking at my designs, Gujarat State Handloom and Handicraft Development Corporation gave all those designs, whosoever had made it with me, all of them got orders. And they were sold in Gurjari. That took it off. The natural indigo, which people had stopped using, started using. But the second main thing which helped it was for same director of Gujarat State Handicrafts and Handloom Development Corporation, gave NID 2 years, funded it for 2 years to do natural indigo dyeing workshop for craftspeople in Gujarat and Rajasthan. And I was also told by NID to do that. And what I did is, I said, okay, I can do it. But I got same indigo dyer in whose dye I have a dupatta which I've dyed, which was in 100 years old natural indigo vat. And I got him to do that for 2 reasons. He was going to abandon his work because he was not getting enough. With this thing, he got, for 2 years, he got the work, and he was the best to teach. So we got the entire thing revived, and he could teach other craftspeople how to do natural indigo. So the 0 people working using natural indigo in Rajasthan and Gujarat, they were all using, even when I went to Kutch, they said, Ajrak is made using natural dyes. And I said, what is natural dyes that you are using? Except putting the pata with the myrobalam. You are using alizarin and you are using natural indigo, chemical indigo. And he also told me that the alizarin is from the product of the madar ka powder bana diya kind. This thing. I said it's not true. And luckily, one fine day I got a phone call from my cousin, and she said, you're working on natural dyes. Do you want to see a alizarin factory? I said, wonderful, I wanted to. I thought there was only one factory in India, and I had no access to it. I said, yes, of course. So she said she owned a factory in Baroda. So I went and saw, and not an iota of madar I find there. So that is the kind of things that is going on wrongly. And what I'm trying to say is, these craftspeople were already masters, and we have already given this kind of credits everywhere. Yellappa was then taken by Dastakar, and so many people were kind of this thing, till when he died, he was already given Master of Craftsman, the Dyer Award. And so I'm at least happy that it was not that the designers put themselves always in front. There are so many craftspeople are kind of that way.
Absolutely.
This thing. So that should be taken care of. like to show you. This book has the natural dies of Buster, and each and every design has the name of the person who has produced it, who has made that art, and with the village. And what did it do? Everybody reached to, even all the MIP students and all the NIT students and many other design colleges reached there. Even the merchants reached there, and then they got all the orders. Again, sleeping craft today is so good. This textile collections have gone in, Lakme fashion shows, and it's also now today, if you order this, you have to wait for a year for getting the piece. They've got, and it's just name clutters, and they know everybody is now very deliberate. So there are things like that.
Okay, so
So finally, we have one student question after these 3 days. So he is Ayush. So Ayush, please.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. So my question is that as a student of design, how should be our approach in learning the skills and as well as developing the language of design, where we should emphasize more on learning the skills or learning design as a language, and if how it is advisable for the student of design to collaborate with artisans and karigars in their college levels to produce the articles, especially for the students of product or fashion.
I think that's very simple. First, you have to accept if you are learning from anybody, that person is your guru. Yeah? You give him he or she requires to be given that honor, and you learn it from them as if they are your teachers. The teaching shifts from there. But I have observed many times we go as if we know everything and we are giving down to them something because just because they're poor, they may not be as good income as you have it. But I think this attitude should change. And I'm not generalizing everybody goes like that. You should first and foremost thing is to accept them as your teachers are probably better than your design teachers because they know they are in that field for generations. So this is important. So that's it. They are your teachers.
Sir, my question was
Yes.
that we have to focus more on learning the tools or the skills or learning it as a language and developing it. Means
I don't separate the language and the skills. They are one and the same. How can you separate them? How can you separate them?
So like for example, if I am creating a chair, so I should be more focused on its technical and innovation or rather than cutting the woods and as a student.
Both.
Ayush, now we can move to the next question. Tapati ma'am, I think.
If it is just one clarification, while said that, if your question is that whether I should give importance to the substance or style and substance, the different matter. I would always say this style should follow the substance. It's always like that. There are examples I can think of in film. You see, one of the great directors we have, again, another Bengali director called Ritvik Ghatak. You must have heard of him. You must have seen his films. Many times his films are low-budget films, so the raw stock may not be very good. But that didn't stop him from becoming great director. He's one of the greatest directors of India. Always ranked in par with Mr. Satyajit Ray. So, this shows that, and his excellence is in the substance, how he deals with the film, and not either Rastak is four, so there may be some little quality difference. The same thing, I will give another example, Cartier-Bresson. Cartier-Bresson, you know Henry Cartier-Bresson, one of the uh, greatest photographers, world-known photographers. He's an artist. He never said, he always photographed, but he never said he's a photographer. He said he uses his camera as the drafting board. He draws with the camera. That is how he puts it. So he is an artist who uses camera as the tool, as the medium. And many times his photographs are, even if they're blurred, but they're still great photographs. You see, this is what I'm clarifying, that always substance kind of decides the style and not the other way around, no? The style should follow the substance.
Okay, so we have questions from Tapati ma'am, and that will be the last question. After that, we can go for lunch, ma'am. And no, ma'am. Please.
It's more a reflection. I'm trying to understand this field, and I really appreciated this panel because coming from a non-practice background and coming into a field which closely studies practice, I've always felt a great sense of deficiency in not knowing the skills of making, to put it very briefly. But here I wanted to really come back to the we factor, which from Professor Chatterjee to all of you have really emphasized that today, whether it's art, design, or craft, there is a move to acknowledge that from individual authorship to think about the collectivity of work. And we know that several artists from even a few generations ago to now are very conscious in thinking about that it is a collaborative work. But I'm nonetheless here thinking about a certain hierarchy that is inevitable, and how does one dismantle that? I think power, social class, upper caste, all of this comes into play. So this equation that you wonderfully made, art equals genius, design, innovation, craft, skill, and utility. So if you were to think about labor, and what are the hierarchies of labor that comes in? So if intellectual labor is also recognized as labor, and those who ideate and design another kind of labor, and many who work with material process and all as another kind, then we are really looking at creative labor, but across three kinds. So the fact that those who just read books, work in archives, teach and write, we are doing labor too, but ours is privileged labor, of course. But nonetheless, I've always kind of thought that maybe labor is what we need to bring back right out there and think about a certain both institutional and social hierarchization of labor that is involved. But my question to all three of you really was that about aspirations and ambitions that are coming out of a different domain, who you're calling the other. You're now here saying we are acknowledging authorship. So all the people who have participated are getting their names. It's happening even in a Pujo collaborative work where many designers now insist on putting the names of all 70 people who've contributed. Their faces are there and there. But I'm thinking about social mobility, which is something the Pujo offers, where you begin as a helper and you can become a designer. It's a field which is not quality controlling in the same way. There's a democratic way where you lesser fee and you can become the designer. And there are others who are saying, but they're not proper training. I'm thinking about today the artisan, and the term kept returning, or the craftsperson, who wants to be artist and designer themselves. So it's not just about artists and designers learning from them, but about they now not just wishing to be a resource or a fount of knowledge and skill, but to say, can we make that social leap? So we know that galleries today will show, yes, a Sharno Chitrakar or a Sonabai work, and they enter a gallery circuit, but the hierarchies all remain. So I'm therefore thinking that what do we do? And many art schools today are dealing with students who are coming from entirely different social skill backgrounds, and where therefore particularly the, you could say, the tyranny of having to do written PhDs is very, very, very difficult. There's also language factors. We're dealing with English medium worlds, and there is something called that, and we are dealing with other language medium. So I'm thinking that how do we address the question that not that we learn and give authorship to craft, but that those who have come from a lineage of craft or are thinking of modern urban craft may want to have designer or artistic ambitions and want to travel places, not just in terms of their work being shown globally, like Ganga Devi shown globally, but to say that we may not want to go back to doing what our forefathers have done, that we want to now keep those skills going, but maybe now take it into an entirely different platform. So I just wanted to hear back from you all on that experience, since you all work directly with those people.
I wanted to share an interesting example. So that hierarchies are getting broken through technology, and that's been an interesting disruptor in this hierarchical process. And I'll give you an interesting example of a body of work that I had developed. During pandemic, a lot of artisans who I work with would call to say, especially Potuas, if you want to buy some Potachitro. And initially I did buy, and then I was like, it's the same. My house is filled. I really don't have resources to buy more. And the content is also fairly repetitive, So just as a conversation, I said, all the time you're making Babu Bibi, maybe you can make Babu Babu and Bibi Bibi, and that might sell. So he calls back after 2 days to say, what exactly did you mean when you said that, So then I actually got into a conversation on sexuality, on gender with him, and send him references, of course, his own personal practices, in his surroundings. And then he did this very interesting series. And now I would say that I'm a co-author in the process, and also it was a work that I had commissioned, and I said that, obviously at the moment there is a resource crunch, so I'm commissioning you to do this work. So it's very interesting. And once the body of work is done, it was with him, and he said, put it in a courier or whatever, and then I'll take it from you. Suddenly, I received, after a month or so, invitation from a gallery in Mumbai. And then the excited curator calls me to say, we have a eureka moment, here is this guy who's done this entire interesting series on gender. And I'm like, oh, how interesting. And I'm like, that sounds like a coincidence. Can you share the work? And I see the same body of work. So instead of sending it to me, he sent it to the gallery. And I just wanted to, I asked the curator, so what's the story? He said, he did it from his personal authorship of where he went in and, he went to sell his work and somebody approached him and he felt it was inappropriate. But later on, he reflected on it and figured that maybe it's natural. And so he dwelled into it. And then this body of works come as a personal expression. Voila. Yes. So what I'm saying is it's interesting how, there's an interesting disruption and these aspirations. So I confronted, I called him and I said, what happened? And he said, Dada, I wanted to be at the gallery. It was a make or break for me. And so I sent it, I'm sorry. Please, amake, kama kore din. So it's quite interesting. This dynamics is not as it was. Technology is really, so it depends on who you're connected with, how you're pushing your work, and technology definitely is helping in that process. So it's quite a disruptor in an interesting way. You can't keep people and resources hidden, and the aspirations can then, so it's that's why I was talking about framework. How do you mitigate this? Because you've also invested yourself, you feel cheated, but then so we don't really have legal frameworks to sort of work around them as of now. So, and I don't think only legal frameworks would also work. So it's an interesting example that I thought I'll share.
I had the opportunity to speak to two traditional potters, one of whom comes from Rajasthan and one from Bombay. The person from Rajasthan, Om Prakash, by virtue of his own initiative, he has had the opportunity to travel to many places abroad. He's won awards, and his work shows a very interesting refinement, which has tradition very much in it, but certainly a touch of the contemporary. The other potter in Bombay, who is also an excellent potter, for some reason has not shown that inclination to become contemporary in the manner that Om Prakash has. And in fact, we are in the process of an experiment where we invited him to come and, work without purpose, to play in our studios. But by virtue of having worked for so many years just for production, just for getting the livelihoods in place, that the very notion of play is strange and alien to them. It will take time, I would think, for him to absorb perhaps what is being suggested. And in fact, in the morning, because this question of how does one give up or share privilege gracefully is a complex, bothersome question. And for example, if the lion invites the rabbits to come share dinner, the rabbits would naturally hesitate before they trust the lion. So I think it's a very complex process. I really wouldn't know unless large numbers of people wake up to this and are generous. And anyway, so that's what, yeah.
So on that note, we can close this session. A huge round of applause for Shahrukh sir, Raja Mohanty sir, and S. Balaram sir. We can now go for lunch, and post lunch we have our third technical session, and after that we have our valedictory session.
Today we'll have to especially the participants, I'll request all of them to have the lunch quickly and assemble in your respective venues by 2:30. And today we have our valedictory session at 4:30 p.m. in this seminar hall only, right? So let's break for the lunch. Thank you very much.